Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Planetos podcast, a podcast dedicated to the fans of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire and HBO's A Game of Thrones. A warning for all you listeners out there, this podcast will discuss all material, the books including the main series, Dunk and Egg, The World of Ice and Fire, the novellas, the comics, the upcoming Fire and Blood, the Winds of Winter sample chapters, and all of the episodes of the show, including commentaries, background material, and bonus content, as well as theories, essays, quotes, and interviews by George, anything and everything. And I'm one of your hosts, Brett. You can find me at Twitter, or you can find me on Twitter at Homely Pillow.
And I'm your other host, Travis. I can be found at Sarah_Travis on Twitter.
We hope you enjoyed the show. In A Clash of Kings, Quaithe delivers a cryptic message to Dany and says, "To go forward, you must go back." And that's what we're doing here today. We're going to go back to a simpler time in the series. This episode will focus on a particular favorite of ours, Blackwater, episode 9 from season 2, as well as 6 chapters in A Clash of Kings that detail the siege of King's Landing. Those chapters are Sansa 5, Davos 3, Tyrion 13. It's been a long time since I've read Roman numerals. Tyrion 13, Sansa 6, Tyrion 14. Oh, yeah. Tyrion 14, and Sansa 7. Yeah, we can definitely edit that.
He did. Yeah, I mean, he did warn you that he's illiterate in the first episode. So.
I don't know. Now we have to keep it. Okay, well, we'll talk about how the show, or we'll talk about how this episode and the storyline affected the show's production and how the events within them continue to impact the show and the book's plot and characters. We'll also talk broadly about fan reactions and how these episodes made lasting impressions on the fandom. Now, this episode has a pivotal battle that shaped the early story of A Song of Ice and Fire, and it ends in a very surprising way, to say the least. Especially for Tyrion Lannister, this episode is a pivotal moment in his arc. So, Travis, please talk to us about Blackwater and the 6 chapters in A Clash of Kings.
All right, so I'm really excited about this. We're not a video podcast at this point, but I've got my Stannis shirt on, so I'll try to be fair here as I read this.
I can screenshot a picture of you.
No.
Could be
no.
Okay.
No, because when it gets to the end of this, I don't want to be one of those people rounded up by the Lannisters and forced to bend the knee to drop.
Antlermen.
Yeah, so here we go. We hope you enjoy this. Again, one of our favorite episodes of the show. So Blackwater, Stannis Baratheon is coming. A huge fleet of warships race through a churning sea toward King's Landing. Their bows filled with frightened men and boys who will fight and die this night for the one true king. On the command deck of the lead ship, Mathos Seaworth says to his father, "The tide's against us." "Aye, but we have the wind," Davos replies. Mathos believes in their cause, their strength, their god, their king, and their captain. Davos is a practical man through and through and knows the battle to take the capital will be difficult and horrific. A distant storm rages as Tyrion and Shae lay in the Hand's chambers, sharing what could be a final, intimate moment. Tyrion is sleepless and restless, displaying an aching vulnerability regarding the coming battle. His sister Cersei is drinking and watching the distant sea. Maester Pycelle is delivering a potion to her and tells her how poisonous it can be in large quantities. Lannister soldiers sing The Rains of Castamere as they have a final drink before the siege. The Hound enters and the mood goes sour. He and Bronn, both deadly men in their own right, confront each other before the bells ring to announce the arrival of Stannis Baratheon. The two warriors share one more drink before the war. The bells are tolling throughout the city as Pod dresses Tyrion for war, and they learn more about Varys and the tunnels beneath King's Landing. The drums respond as Stannis' men are called to arms. In the throne room, the Lannisters rush to finish their preparations. Sansa is forced to kiss Joffrey's sword. He proclaims that she will taste his uncle's blood when he returns from the field of battle. And Sansa tears down his euphoria by comparing his actions to her brother, Robb Stark, the king in the north. Atop the walls, Tyrion takes command of the preparations as Cersei hosts Sansa, Shae, and the other ladies of the court in her solar. Davos wonders why the Lannister fleet isn't blockading the bay. Joffrey sees his uncle's approaching fleet appear out of the fog. Stannis stares. The archers dock their bows. A single Lannister ship comes out of the mist, and wildfire, Davos proclaims. The pyromancer climbs the wall as Tyrion signals Bronn, and a lonely arrow streaks across the sky, igniting a bomb that decimates many ships in Stannis' fleet. The Hound is aghast, the pyromancer is happy, and Stannis is unmoved. Prepare to land, Stannis commands. His men are scared. Hundreds will die, a lieutenant pleads. Thousands, Stannis predicts. Back in Cersei's solar, she is drunker and demands Sansa share some wine and a moment of realization that Cersei would prefer to be a man, that she would fuck any conqueror to save herself and her family, but knows Stannis would never succumb to her charms, saying that she'd have better luck seducing his horse. And Cersei tells Sansa a terrible truth. This flock of hens will be raped as the city falls. On the shores, Stannis leads the landing party, and Tyrion realizes how truly serious and stubborn Stannis Baratheon is. The Baratheon men reach the walls, the Lannister men rush out to meet them, and Cersei tries to find out more about Shae. Lancel delivers an update, and Cersei tells Sansa that Sir Ilyn will behead them all. A fiery soldier rushes toward the Hound, freezing him in fear before Bronn saves the day. The ladders are raised, and Stannis and his men scale the walls. Sandor Clegane wants a drink. Fuck the water, he spits. Bring me wine. Tyrion chastises him. Joffrey orders his dog to return to the battle, and the Hound delivers an amazing line before abandoning the Lannister cause. A ram begins pounding the mudgate, and Joffrey flees at his mother's urging. Tyrion makes a final, desperate, witty plea before attacking Stannis' men from the rear. Cersei slams Lancel's wound when he tells her that the battle is lost. Sansa leads the hens in prayer, and Shae tells her to run and hide. Back in her chambers, Sansa picks up a small toy. Considering how much her life has changed since she's arrived in King's Landing, the Hound reveals himself and asks her to come with him. Sansa refuses, and the Hound tells her the world is full of killers. You won't hurt me, Sansa pleads. The Hound won't, and leaves her. Tyrion and his men destroy the ram, and the Lannisters cheer before more Baratheon soldiers rush them. Stannis is cutting his way through the defenders on the wall, and Tyrion is saved by a member of the King's Guard before the man's own blade is turned on the imp, slicing Tyrion's pretty face. Pod saves his lord. In the throne room, Cersei quiets Tommen and tells him that one day all the beasts of the world will bow to lions. They watch the door, as back on the battlefield, Tyrion hears a horn and sees Lannister and Tyrell banners cutting their way through Stannis' men. Cersei opens the poison and bids Tommen drink it before the door bursts open. Stand and fight, damn you, Stannis screams atop the walls. Father, Cersei cries, dropping the poison as Tywin Lannister enters to save the day. Stannis' men pull him away. The battle is over, and the Lannisters have won.
Ooh.
All right. Not all right. Fuck the Lannisters. No, this is just, to me, to this day remains my favorite, if not one of my top 3, top 5 favorite episodes of the show. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But one of them, and you talked a little bit about this on our first episode, is the dichotomy between who you want to win, who deserves to win. I mean, that's what this show does so well, and especially this episode. We love Tyrion, but we hate Cersei and Joffrey and Tywin and the rest of them. We don't want Tyrion to die. You and I like Stannis. There's a lot of people out there that don't like Stannis. Yeah. Davos serves him. Stannis has killed his brother. He's got a red witch that serves him. But you know damn well, if he takes King's Landing, he's gonna scour that court clean. If he takes the throne, he's gonna be well prepared for the coming invasion of the others. He might not win, but he's gonna take it serious where the rest of them don't take anything serious.
Yeah, that's true. He would even kill Varys, and which I'm sure. Well, maybe Varys he would escape. I'm sure. I think he wouldn't get caught. But
yeah, there's a reason. Yeah, there's a reason he knows all those tunnels and everything. He's getting out of there.
But yeah, and like I said last episode, I think the reason I am I became so invested in this show is because of this episode. I think that's when I really started becoming obsessive with the show, and then leads us to here.
Yeah, and this is this is the penultimate episode of the season, and traditionally, it changes a little bit in the later seasons, but traditionally the episode 9 is there's this rising tension, this rising momentum in each season that you reach the zenith in episode 9. That's where the climax is. That's where the action usually happens. You look at the Reigns of Castamere in season 3. You go back to the beheading of Ned Stark in season 1, the battle at the Wall in season 4, and Daznak's pit in season 5. Everything in the season kind of builds to episode 9, and then episode 10 is traditionally kind of a cleanup episode, but also lays the groundwork for the next season. So you've got that in spades here, and like you said, it's those moments in episode 9 usually that kind of really get you going. I mean, I remember, I think it was last year during season 7, we didn't get 10 episodes, and so a lot of people were like, which episode is episode 9 going to be? Like, which episode do I root for, or do I wait for? So I think that's kind of funny that you can kind of track each season by those pivotal episodes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So let's talk a few details specifically about this episode. So this one's written by George himself. George R. R. Martin writes the episode,
which is cool.
Yeah, and I've got a little more to say about that because I listened to the. I told you about this. I listened to the commentary, and George is obviously a fascinating person just to listen to talk about the episode. But this was this was directed by Neil Marshall. Marshall is a British-born director. He has a lot of horror flicks under his belt. The Descent. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
I don't know.
They're I think they're like cave divers.
I may have seen that, but it's been
there's
so long,
like these these creatures that are like blind, and they've got to be like very cautious how they move, and they can't make much noise. It's a pretty good horror flick. He did some British-based movies like Doomsday, which is kind of an apocalyptic, kind of a kind of like a Mad Max Escape from L.A. Type film. There's a Centurion. I think that's with Michael Fassbender. I don't remember. And then he's done some episodes of Black Sails, which is a really good series that was on, I think, Stars. It's a show about pirates in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Hannibal, which is a very good show. I don't know if you watched that. It's crazy as hell.
No, I have not. But
yeah, so it's based on Hannibal Lecter. And then Westworld, which I know you've watched some of.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the first episode. I still have not started it, but I have HBO again, so.
All right.
So,
that's probably important for a podcast that focuses on Game of Thrones.
Yep.
And then he's rumored to be involved in the Hellboy reboot.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, which I'm not sure why they need a Hellboy reboot. I thought Ron Perlman did a really good job as Hellboy in those other two movies, but I think it's just been so long since he's been in that role. That must be why they're doing it.
Yeah, and wasn't the second movie, or was there 2 or 3?
There were 2. Yeah.
Wasn't the second one not so great, or something?
Yeah, it wasn't that great. It was like the Golden Fleece, the Golden Circle. I mean, something like that. I don't even remember. I know it's neither of those, but it was something golden something. So another episode of Game of Thrones that he directed was Watchers on the Wall. So that comes from season 4, episode 9. So that's the battle at the wall where the wildlings attack the wall. And if you think about it, it's this kind of a similar structure to this episode. You've got some of those quieter moments in the beginning where they're preparing for the battle, and then you have just total chaos and war told through a few different perspectives, mainly Jon Snow, but a few different perspectives with Ygritte and Sam and others. So I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah. Now that you've
obviously it was a much bigger budget at that time in season 4, but very similar structure. And this obviously laid the groundwork for a lot of the epic battles to come in Game of Thrones, especially Battle of the Bastards and the Spoils of War in the later seasons. I think if you look at, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, but if you look at the spectacle on screen in Battle of the Bastards and Spoils of War, the action is just superb. The choreography is amazing. I mean, it's like stuff you never saw on TV. I mean, I remember just that shot of Jon with the Bolton cavalry coming at him, and then that chaos of him slicing through men, arrows flying, and then obviously the Spoils of War this last season with the Dothraki and the Lannisters and Tarleys, and I mean, you just haven't seen anything like that. But
I was gonna say, I mean, both of those episodes I think are I don't know, I can't think of like another large scale battle that's happened on, even in movies, that was like as good as that. I mean, it was just
right.
I mean, it was just done really well.
Right. Now, obviously, there are some writing issues with some of the not Spoils. I think Spoils of War is a really superb episode. But Battle of the Bastards is a little off, but you can't say the action was not good. I mean, that to me, that action's so good.
Well, and the mood behind it too. It wasn't like, oh, this is, it was awesome and it was cool, but then it also showed like the horrors of the war too, like which is I think was what George likes to do with the book. So I'm kind of glad that transferred over a little bit.
Right. And so just one final thing about the production. This episode was nominated for a Hugo Award, and they actually won. So both Neil Marshall and George shared a Hugo Award for this episode. So,
Oh wow.
again, really good episode. It has a lot of those elements that Game of Thrones is famous for. So, let's talk about those specifics. Obviously we're talking about Blackwater in the books in A Clash of Kings. We're going to talk about this a little later. We'll get into a synopsis of those chapters, but the battle's told from 3-point view chapters. Tyrion has 2 chapters. Davos has 1, and Sansa has 3, and those are the characters that we see. So you've got someone inside the castle. From Sansa's point of view, you've got someone on the walls and rushing out to meet Stannis' men in Tyrion, and then someone in the fleet in Davos. And I think it's crafted very well. Going back and reading those chapters, it's very interesting. And we're gonna talk a little later about the differences between the chapters. But there's a lot of stuff in this episode that come directly from those chapters. So I think it as an adaptation, it did a pretty good job. But one of the things is that this is early in the show. The budget wasn't as large as it is now, so they had to make some decisions. They had to cut some things. They had to be efficient and effective, and I actually think that pays off pretty well for this episode. The spectacle that we've talked about, that comes later in the seasons is much better, but the stakes that are in this episode, to me, I mean, again, Battle of the Bastards, really good episode, really good battle, but you don't want Ramsay Bolton to win. I mean, maybe there's some sick fucks out there too, but you don't want that to happen. So, I think the way they get around that in that episode is when you think Ramsay is going to win again. And you're like, oh God, why? And then obviously the Vale Knights come charging in. Spoils of War, I think gets a lot of foundation from Blackwater, because you want to see Daenerys and the Dothraki and Drogon fuck shit up. Like, you just want her to lay waste to everything, but you don't want Jaime and Bronn to die. You don't want to. You don't want to see them die.
No, the only thing I would say about that episode is I never felt like Jaime. I felt like Bronn could have died, but I never really felt like Jaime or Daenerys were gonna die right there. As much as they tried to make it that way, I was there's just no way. But with Blackwater, you really had that that dynamic.
I think if Bronn had. I think, first of all, Bronn should have died. That he probably should. I don't want Bronn to die.
But it was hinted.
You needed some You needed some death. I mean, in that battle to really ground it, and I think that would have made the stakes higher for Jaime when he rushes Daenerys. You would have been like, oh shit, Bronn just died. Now this idiot's picking up a lance and going, and you really would have thought he was going to die. I mean, the way they did it, the way the camera was angled, and the music, and just the back and forth of Tyrion saying don't do it, I thought oh shit, what's going to happen, how's he going to get out of this? And kind of in that moment I forgot about Bronn. But I agree with you, that you really, in retrospect, you were like, okay, he's never going to die. He was just never going to die. Well, the way they ended that with him sinking, you're like, oh, he's not going to die off screen.
Well, and then you see Bronn too, and he's looking at that bag of gold at that one point, and then he doesn't take it, and you're like, oh, now he's going to die for the Lannisters. But But
so go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, okay, you go ahead, because it'll probably.
Okay.
I was going to say, well, how about the Hound's face when the explosion happens?
Yeah.
His face. I was watching it. I was watching it right before we sat down to record this, and I was laughing at that because it was so good. She was just
Well, you get that build up to it because you get that one moment on the castle wall where someone's walking by with a, I think they're on the castle wall at this point. They may be walking up to the castle wall. Someone walks by with a torch, and it just kind of goes in front of his face, and he kind of jumps back. And you obviously, we know from the books, we know from season one and earlier episodes of season two that he doesn't like fire, and we know why he doesn't like fire.
yeah.
But I thought you're right. They really built that up really nicely in this episode to show um, what he has a, and it's a rational fear to him. It's a rational fear of fire to him, and when that
Yeah.
explosion goes off and he's just, they're all bathed in green, but he's especially bathed in green, and he's just like, one, he's fearing for his life, but two, he doesn't think people should die that way. Like that's, he'll cut anyone down with a sword. He does that doesn't matter to him, in these early seasons. But he's watching all these people just perish by a fire, and that's just something he doesn't like. He just doesn't like that for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Uh,
But you're right. That brings up a good point. The the Hound's face in this. The Hound's uh, um, the Rory McCann who plays the Hound. Like it's the characters in this episode that make it. Like it's the acting that's important in this episode. It's not the spectacle.
yeah. Yeah.
It's the acting. It's like you said. It's the tension of who of these people are going to die, who's going to win, who makes it out alive. That's just, and that's a hallmark. I mean, again, we've talked about this in the last episode, that it's these quiet moments that matter on Game of Thrones. Yes, the spectacle's great, the battles are great, the war is great, all that stuff is awesome. We love it. But it's these characters talking, these characters plotting. That's what makes this a really amazing show.
I agree. What is it? The human heart and conflict thing.
Yeah, the human heart in conflict. That's all that matters. I think that was William Faulkner, the novelist, American novelist
Hmm.
that talked about that. Sound and the Fury, and um, um, other great books, mostly set in the South. But I think that's where George got it. That that's what important, the human um, heart and conflict. But you get to see, this show is fantasy, but it takes a lot of its plot and foundations from our own real world European Middle Ages, and so this is a medieval siege that we're seeing. Unfortunately, we don't get the trebuchets and the catapults that are in the chapters. People being flung, pitch being flung, rocks being flung. I still want to see that. I hope we get to see that in season 8. But this,
cool.
yeah, oh, it'd be awesome. But just imagine. I can't even imagine. You always say, "Oh, I'd love to if you could time travel, like go back to ancient Rome or back to the Middle Ages and see." It'd be scary as shit.
Yeah.
Like someone
Yeah.
sieging your castle, especially Stannis Baratheon. Like you would shit your pants like multiple times if he was outside your walls trying to come through.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially because he's relentless.
Really, yeah, just this. Again, we're dealing with a episode that comes early in the show's production. Season 2, it was done on a smaller budget, so there had to be decisions, and George talks about this in his commentary. There had to be some things cut. There had to be decisions made to make it work on screen. And I actually think, and we can talk a little bit about this, the limitations, I think, produced a better product. and there's some other examples of that in film and TV. But here's some of the ways that um, they made it made it different, and I think not improved it over the chapters of the books, because again, books and the show, two different things.
Yeah.
But because of the resources they had, this is what they did. So they shot it at night. They shot it at night. That way they could, make it make it appear that Stannis' fleet was larger than what it was. The action seemed bigger. The desperation is a little more, you're fighting at night. You can't see the enemy coming on you. You don't know where they're going to land.
Yeah,
all of that. The wildfire going off like a nuclear bomb. I think that sort of happens in the chapters, but it's more kind of a gradual build.
Yeah. It seemed like it kind of just spread after there was like an initial explosion, but then it kind of just
it just kind of spread, and I'm sure they were shooting different canisters or batches of it in different places, and even it even says in the chapters that it just didn't catch some places, and obviously again, being at night, that green explosion set against that black sky, was just done really effectively on screen. And then, one of the hallmarks of Tyrion's arc in A Clash of Kings and the battle itself is the chain that he has forged in secret, and that Sir Emery Florent, Stannis's wife's uncle or brother, I can't remember. I think it's her uncle.
Man, I listened to it today, and
yeah. Well, anyways, he just rushes headlong into the battle, and Davos actually sees the chain, but he can't understand why it's not raised as they approach, because he's thinking it's going to block their approach. Obviously, we find out what it does in the books, but there's no chain in the show, so they didn't have the chain, and that actually kind of makes the Lannister situation a little more desperate. They set off this huge bomb and it destroys a lot of his fleet, but his numbers are just so overwhelming. I think it's said in the show he has 5-1, a 5-1 advantage.
Oh wow!
Over the Lannisters. So I don't think it ever really says how many people he has in his army, but I think he says it at some point after he takes control of a lot of Renly's forces. He says it to Davos earlier. So that brings me to the question. What would Blackwater look like if Game of Thrones was just now premiering and they had the budget that they do in the current seasons? What would Blackwater look like on screen? Would it be a more faithful adaptation of what happened in the chapter? Would it just be this huge spectacle? How do you think it would look versus how it did in season 2?
I think it would probably end up being more like it was in the show, or like what was already done, but maybe they might include the chain, because the all the boats wrecked together and just forming a big bridge of just like destroyed ships. I mean, it just sounds so cool. And I feel like they'd probably try to do something like that, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, and they probably have the 3 whores as well, the trebuchets that the Lannisters use to.
Yeah, I would. I would think they would introduce the Antlermen too.
Yeah.
I'd
love to see the Antlermen.
I don't know, like that would have been a funny one to have in the show. Just Joffrey getting to do something he wants.
Right.
And
Which is something interesting that Beefish and Poor Quentin pointed out in there. Did you get to listen to the?
no,
No, it wasn't. It
oh,
wasn't the Stannis episode. It was the last regular episode about Ned. It's the one where Ned's at his first meeting in the small council, and
yeah.
they start talking about Littlefinger. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. The Antlermen are a lot of merchants who support Stannis, and that's obviously why they're called the Antlermen. Joffrey nails the antlers on their head and throws them over the wall. But what Beefish and Poor Quentin talk about is Littlefinger took out a lot of loans from these people, and so did he orchestrate? Did he orchestrate them getting turned over to the Lannisters and being killed and flung out of the city?
Oh yeah, that he probably did. He probably because he it's isn't it implied that he's the one who probably talked to Joffrey or talked Joffrey into cutting Ned's head off, and um,
Yes.
and it's also implied that he's the one who talked Joffrey into hiring the dwarves, the jousting dwarves.
Right.
Um,
Right. To
just
piss
to
Tyrion off.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. To set the stage um, for him to, already be mad during uh, the Purple Wedding.
Which
So yeah.
which that's all implied. It's not ever stated,
Right.
right?
That's the thing. Like, yeah, yeah. That's right. It's always just it's just always us fans going back and reading again and thinking, whoa, 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 whoa. Littlefinger did this. Littlefinger laid the groundwork. So that's yeah. But yeah, no, I agree with you that I think even if this episode had $15 million versus five, I don't know what it had during season two budget, but I think they would end up with a pretty similar episode because I think again they made the right choices, and what paid off on screen was those character moments, those um, moments where the action was really necessary to show you um, the stakes of the siege. Yeah, we'd probably get the chain. We might get the warships all crammed together, the bridge of ships, the trebuchets. But again, I said this earlier that I think it pays off. The fact that they had to make those decisions sometimes forces you to produce. You might not know it, but you produce a better product. And I think
Yeah.
there's a couple examples. There's a couple examples of that with the original Star Wars, the Empire Strikes Back and the Indiana Jones films. Yeah, that those had a lot of money. They had a ton of money spent on them. Not as much as you would think, but it forced them to make decisions that okay, we have to live in this. How do we get everything on camera that really tells the story, really drives home the plot, really embraces what the characters need to see and do and say. And I think that again, we're not here to criticize the latter seasons of the show, but that's somewhat missing in some of the moments later in the show that they've got a lot of spectacle on screen where sometimes these smaller moments, these more efficient battles can do just as well, and really people can walk away thinking this is still a great episode.
Yeah. And I'm gonna save all my what I liked about the show, or I'll save all my differences and my likes between book and show after the second
Okay.
synopsis. But
Okay. Well, so let me get through these because there's still quite a bit, and then we'll get to the chapters.
Okay.
So, we talked about that dichotomy uh, between who you want to win, but we also there's a dichotomy between quiet and loud moments in this, and it's done very effectively in the build up, the first few scenes where Stannis' fleet is approaching. I think it's raining, so it's kind of this calm before the storm. There's even as Tyrion and Shay are laying in the Hands Chambers, you can hear in the distance, the
Yeah.
storm coming, and I think that's done very effectively. And throughout this whole season, we've seen Tyrion's a great hand to the king, but things are so terrible in King's Landing, mainly because of Joffrey and Cersei, and he's had to be very crafty of how he circumvents their power. Just imagine if he hadn't been there, or they had stopped him from acting as Tywin's replacement.
God.
Yeah, I mean they would have been fucked. Stannis would have stormed the walls and taken it quickly, probably, and there'd have been no hope for them.
I'm sure half the council would have ditched. I'm sure Littlefinger would have left.
Yeah,
Varys
he
would
would
have been
have.
gone.
Yep. Yeah, I think Littlefinger would have. I don't know what Littlefinger would have done. He may have um, he may have taken Sansa out faster, out of the city or something, and maybe even tried to make a deal with the Tyrells. That would have been interesting. He may have tried to wed Sansa to the Tyrells and get them involved in that fashion,
Hmm.
to take the throne. Because then he could have put them against Stannis. Okay, so let's play that out. If you think Stannis is going to win, Tyrells, Loras, all of them want revenge, for the death of Renly. That would have been interesting. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
that's a big what if, and there's millions of possibilities.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so there's kind of this uneasiness in King's Landing, whereas Stannis and his fleet is just this relentless force coming. It's this, the pounding drums. These ships are racing through. Stannis is just staring straight forward, like there's nothing stopping me from this goal. And it's kind of frightening in a way. I mean, and it's there's that giant stag on the front of Fury, on the front of his flagship. It's just like these horns are coming for you. They're gonna just literally gut you. And it's kind of like I don't think it is kind of like it. It is. It's a lot like this. This episode is actually a lot like the Battle of Helm's Deep in the Two Towers
It
in the
is.
Lord of
It
the
is.
Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at night. There's rain. There's walls. There's this huge force um,
I wonder.
attacking them.
I wonder if that's what George was going for with.
That would be yeah, that would be interesting to know. Yeah, I don't I don't
Yeah.
I don't remember him mentioning that in the commentary, but yeah, that's definitely something
Or,
that I remember the first time I watched it. I thought this is like Helm's Deep.
yeah.
This, surely they fashioned a lot of this off of that. Um,
I think so. I mean, maybe he just did it subconsciously, but I don't know.
yeah. Um, but yeah, it's uh, there's that quote in the books about the Baratheons, and you really get to see this. You really get to see this in pure form in this episode, where I think they say that, um, is it Donald Noy? I think Donald Noy says this to maybe John, in A Storm of Swords or something. Might have been a Clash of Kings. I can't remember, but
Hmm.
he talks about the Baratheons and how each of them are very unique, and he talks about Robert's the true steel, Stannis is pure iron, unable to bend, and then Renly is copper, shiny, pretty to look at, but basically useless. Uh, and so that stag image that um, that emblem of their house, that symbol of their house. I always thought about like there's someone made some artwork. It's like if the characters were in a Disney film and the Disney film was like Bambi, and there's like one of Robert, like he's this huge buck that the antlers are just, they're going every which way. They're wild, they're jagged, like you just like tear you to fucking pieces.
Yeah.
Renly's like this lean buck. The horns are very symmetrical and pretty, and it's perfect. And then Stannis is this kind of like dark-eyed. The antlers are very pointed and jaggy, and like you're like, oh shit, I don't want to, I don't want that one getting anywhere near. But it's pretty. I'll have to find that and send it to you. When I saw that, I just laughed because it just looked like them exactly.
Deers are mean as shit too.
They are. Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah. They're.
I just remember that.
Especially,
What? Wait, what?
good.
Oh, I was gonna say I just remember that video that was on YouTube of that deer just it was just like it was like there was like a little cat and it was like
It.
well the deer and its baby was
Yep.
walking through the yeah through a
Street.
neighborhood and then the cat was kind of stalking it and then yeah then it just started like just like kicking the dog like some
Yeah.
dog
So
yeah.
that's the kind of dog we have. We have a border collie, and so I've seen that before. And um, like she chases deer all the time, especially at my in-laws' house because they live out in this development in the middle of nowhere, and you've got acres and acres of woods around you, and she chases deer and turkey and all kinds of stuff. And so I'm always afraid, like because she's getting older and everything. But man, if she sees deer, she goes nuts. Like she starts foaming at the mouth, like takes off. You just see this black streak of border collie like running around at midnight, and you're like screaming, like get back here. But yeah, I was really sad. Like I had to find out did that dog survive, and then thankfully it did. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
I would have
brutal.
if I'd been that dog's owner, like I would have had a shotgun to that deer's head or
You make
something.
deer jerky, man.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, venison is pretty good.
Yes, it is. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's really good. Like venison. Yeah, have you ever had venison chili?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good, and
I'm,
it's healthy for you.
yes.
It's lean and
I did.
high in protein.
I did
So,
burgers with it one time, and man,
oh, nice.
they and like I got it from someone, and they mixed it with I think a little bit of pork just to get it a
Yeah.
little bit greasy, and then
Yep.
yeah, but oh man, it was so good. And then
Yeah.
deer jerky is the best. If you
Yeah.
ever get a hold of any of that,
Yeah.
it's so good.
Yeah, I had a coworker whose husband was a big hunter, and he made deer jerky around deer season in West Virginia, which is I assume similar to other places, but like in the fall.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
so
Yeah.
she would bring in bags of it, and
Oh,
you had like mild, hot, and then like super spicy, and it was pretty good. So
mm.
he did a good job with it. But let's talk about because I know I'm talking a lot, and we
No,
want to get
it's
to the
it's gold. It's
we
all
want to get
gold.
yeah we want to get to the chapters as well. But again, we're talking about dichotomy. There's this great dichotomy in the episode between the two kings, between Joffrey and Stannis, and we
Okay.
don't see this play out in the chapters because Stannis commands from the rear. I mean, he's a king. He's standing back there. He's given the orders. He's making the men perform the maneuvers and lay siege. Whereas in the episode, he leads from the front, which I think is actually it's one of the original reasons why I latched onto the character, because I was like, this guy's, again, think about it, like Robb Stark,
Yeah, yeah.
he's going into the thick of the battle. and I like that. I liked that in the show. And obviously, you didn't need to do more to make Joffrey a terrible person, but you and I know, again, we all know Joffrey was mistreated by Robert and Cersei. That's not excusing some of the shit he does, but
He still hurt
I
people.
yeah, yeah. And I like that Joffrey runs and hides, and he has no clue. Like, Tyrion's just like, just wait, just
Yeah, they,
basically shut up and wait.
they didn't
Let
even let
me
him in on the plan or
right.
anything.
Yeah, he's just like, what are you doing? Where's my fleet? Um,
Good
and
reason, but
Stannis is scaling the walls, and I love that shot of him as his men are rowing, and he's just like standing there on the prow of the little boat, just like clutching his sword, like,
yeah.
come on, get me to the shore, like, and then he just hops off, and I just love it. And I
It's,
think I go ahead.
oh, it's kind of irresponsible of him though. He needed a shield.
It right. He needed a shield. Now he's the king. He had someone holding a shield
Oh, I'm
above
talking
him, but
about on
as
the
he's
boat. Yeah.
oh no, you're right. No, as he's running, he definitely is, and that's something George complains about, because he's saying, these people aren't wearing helmets. Why aren't they wearing helmets? And obviously he says, okay, you can't have all of your main actors in helmets on a TV show. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
Um, but even as they pass their men, as Joffrey runs away, the men just kind of like look at him and roll their eyes, and you can tell they're getting ready to turn and run before Tyrion inspires them to fight. And then Stannis's men, the fleet's just had the shit blown out of it. This bomb has gone off, um, and he just walks through him, flips the rope over the side, and says, "Come with me and take the city." And they cheer. And so again, that dichotomy between here's a strong leader and here's a weak leader.
Yeah.
And I like that George wrote that, because I think that, for me, that shows in a way what he thinks about Stannis as a character. And he says this in some of his quotes about Stannis, and um, that Stannis does some terrible things. We admit that, but he thinks he's trying to do the right thing. He's just so bound by duty that he's willing to take the easy way out. And Melisandre is obviously
Encouraging. Yeah.
adept and encouraging at, well, let me handle it. I'll do something supernatural, and you'll win. And he thinks, well, okay, sure. I mean, I'm the king. I should be able to do this. So, but yeah, you were gonna say um, this earlier. This is what it's like for an unstoppable force to meet an immovable object, and obviously Stannis perfectly fits that unstoppable force. And then the castle itself, King's Landing itself, and Tyrion fit the immovable object. Like, Tyrion doesn't want to die. Like, he'll move himself if he has to, and flee the city.
Yeah.
But he knows that if he loses, it's not Joffrey and Cersei whose head go on spikes above the wall. It's his as well.
Yeah.
So he's not going to move. So yeah, we talked about this earlier. The who should win, who would win, all of that. We don't want Tyrion to die. Cersei and Joffrey, we do want to die. Another pro for Stannis is he's not going to mistreat Sansa. Now he might use her as a hostage
Which you.
to force Robb to bend the knee, but he's not going to mistreat her.
Yeah. Yeah. Which yeah.
Uh,
My thing too. I mean, like, I kind of thought about this the past couple days. Like, I mean, he's wanting to burn some like he wants to burn what's his nephew's name? I can't. Why can't I think of it? Ed, Edric Storm.
In the books, Edric Storm.
Yeah. Okay. And then Gendry in the show. Like
Gendry
he.
in the show. Yeah.
I mean, he had Sansa. If he had Sansa, would he consider that option though? I don't know. Especially if Rob's unwilling to bend the knee.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I don't know.
That's a fair point. I mean. Yeah, I think probably most likely he would err on keeping her as a hostage. Only because she's the only Stark there. So she's the only
I mean that's what I was thinking too, but I just that thought kind of crossed my mind.
But if things become desperate, things become desperate. You know what he does in desperate situations. Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great character moments in this episode. Sansa and Cersei interacting together. I mean, Cersei is a terrible person, but she's also a great villain. I mean, she has great lines. Her thoughts are just so out there, and she's so paranoid and nuts. But I really enjoyed like all the crazy things she said in this, and the more she gets drunk, the better. Shay's good in this episode. The moment where Sansa says, "Well, Cersei says they're going to rape us," and Shay pulls that knife and is like, "Nobody's raping me." Like, and nobody's going to rape her. Like, she's going to cut some balls off before they get anywhere near her.
That's back when she was likable,
Yeah, before she turned on Tyrion. But I think the real, and then that scene between the Hound and Bronn, where they're sharing a drink and then the bells interrupt. Like that to me is a great episode or a great scene. But really, I think the MVP. You may have another one, but my MVP for this episode is definitely the Hound. You get so much more information on his character. He's both frightening and you feel extremely sad for him in this episode. But that line that he delivers to Tyrion and Joffrey, the "fuck the king."
Yeah. He just says it so casually too.
Yeah. He's just like, "Fuck King's Landing, fuck the city, fuck the."
I mean, he was just done. I mean,
he was done. Yeah, he's gone.
I like how he tells the one archer, he goes, before he goes out there, he's like, "If any of those flaming fucking arrows come near me, I forget what he says to him after that, but it was funny.
Yeah.
He says something.
Yeah, and then that great line that he delivers to Sansa. Stannis is a killer. The Lannisters are killers. Your father was a killer. Your brother is a killer. Your sons would be killers someday. The world is built by killers, so you better get used to looking at them.
Oh yeah,
that was a great line. So George's commentary. We've been talking about this. So here's some really funny insights that I got from the commentary. So one, we talked about this a little bit. He wishes people would wear helmets. It's actually pretty funny because George is literally saying, look, in a battle, you would need to wear a helmet. You're dealing with a sword or a mace or arrows that, people are going to target your head if you don't have a helmet on. They're going to hit you anyways. And actually, this is one of the things that I just recently, I don't know why I did this, but I went back and I read some of the Barristan chapters from A Dance with Dragons, and he's got that.
You were getting ready for the Girls Gone Canon.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and he's got that battle in. It's before, I don't remember who it's with, but it's one of who's the idiot that Daenerys marries? His Dar.
Yeah.
and they go to arrest him, and he's got that mercenary that's protecting him. And it
Yeah.
says, it's basically, um, Barristan uses his armor, he uses his helmet. He lets that mercenary just beat on him, and he knows what he can take. He can take the hits to the armor, he can take the hits to the helmet, because he's a knight. He's had that training, and eventually he kills the mercenary by it. But again, that's the purpose of a helmet. It's not
Yeah.
only protection, but it's a weapon as well. It's used to defend certain areas, but also to allow you to take certain blows so you can deliver other blows.
Well, and even think about like the way it's like Oberyn's death and the way it's described in the book. The mountain at one point, I think it says he slammed a meld fist into his face, shattering his teeth. So
Yeah,
it literally could
should,
do.
as George says in the commentary, should have worn a helmet.
Yeah, he should.
And it's literally those moments. Like there's one point Tyrion runs out and he has a helmet, and he goes, "Oh yes, there he is. He's got a helmet on." And then Tyrion takes off and he's like, "Nope, don't take it off. Put it back." So it's just really funny.
No, and
So
and I was reading one of the Tyrion chapters today, or listening to it, and Tyrion, as he's like during the Battle of the Blackwater, and like as he's riding his horse towards like the wrecked ships, I think he swings his axe and like chops someone's head off, or
right,
part of their head or something, and he actually
right.
goes, should have he said something about he should have been wearing a helmet. It's right there in the book too.
Yeah.
So thought that was pretty funny.
So two more things from George's commentary. We talked about Neil Marshall, the director, earlier. He wasn't
Yes.
the first choice. I don't know who the first choice was, but I just found that interesting that this guy had only 2 weeks to prepare for this episode.
Oh.
So yeah, he was just kind of dropped in, and George says, he did an amazing job, and I think we agree with that as well. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
finally the chain. The chain um, was never going to appear early in the production of season 2. D&D told George it's not going to happen. Don't even put it in the script. We just don't have the budget for it.
Yeah. I feel like that.
So George mentions that he was disappointed, but he thinks that in the end the episode was still very effective.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So
And thinking about the chain and it being in the show, I don't think that'd work. Because there'd have to be a lot of CGI.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
'cause showing the boats, being
Well,
put,
right, and
it'd be a lot of boat stuff. Like,
yeah, yeah, it would be a lot of boat stuff, and like we said, the darkness allowed them not to have so much boats, and they famously, I think it was just until this last season, until season 7, um, they got um, they got they got away with only having like one boat. Like they literally had one boat that they filmed on.
oh
All yeah, and so I think it was just this last season that they actually had a couple boats.
yeah.
So obviously with CGI you can replicate thousands upon thousands of boats. You don't need that for those wide shots, those flyover shots, but you do need them, especially like in the episode where Euron attacks the uh, Yara. Yeah, she's Yara
Well,
in the show, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. God, Yara and Theon and the Dornish fleet. So I want to ask a few questions since these questions are focused on the um, most of them are focused on the show, and then we'll get into the synopsis of the chapters.
Okay.
We'll try to get through that pretty quickly. So, who do you think would win in a fight, the Hound or Braun?
Hmm. I think I'd have to give it to the Hound. Um, I mean, but they fight so differently. But I feel like that the Hound isn't like the Mountain. Like he's not just relying on brute strength. Like
Right.
because if you take the chapter where the Mountain and the Hound actually fight each other, or even in the show, like it's described better in the book, but where
Right.
he's just deflecting his brother's hits. His brother's going for the killing blows. The Mountain's or the Hound's not really even trying. He's just trying to tire him out. It seems like. So I don't know. I'd have to give it to the Hound.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and he does have the strength. Like he doesn't have the brute strength that the Mountain does, but he's
Yes.
got some strength. But he also has the skill
Yes.
as well. I
Yeah.
think he has more skill than the Mountain does, and so that's why I think it'll be very interesting if we do get Clegane Bowl, which please God give us Clegane Bowl in season 8.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
it'll be
they're
interesting.
they've
They're
teased
going
it.
to.
Yeah, they've
They're
teased
they're,
it
they're
so
going to
much.
do it.
Yeah.
Like it's fate. It's going to happen. So actually, I've got some more questions, but I can save those for later because they actually do. They can be either show or book. So we'll wait until this, and I'll try to get through the synopsis. All right. So let's move to the chapters. Again, we've got 6 chapters to cover. I'm going to try and get through these pretty quickly, and then we're going to talk about some of the differences between the episodes and the chapters, and then some overall reactions to this, and answer some questions, and wrap this thing up. So,
All right. Sounds good.
here we go. So, Sansa 5. A chorus of voices are singing prayers across King's Landing. They started that morning as soon as the first sighting of Stannis' sails had been reported. Sansa has come at Joffrey's command to see the king and his party off to battle. Tyrion seems concerned for her and tells her he should have sent her with Tommen. But Joffrey interrupts their exchange and calls her to him like a dog, ordering her to kiss his sword and promising her that he will return with it bathed in Stannis' blood. She hopes Stannis is the one who wins the battle. Sansa goes to the castle sept and finds it crowded. She lights candles in front of the 7 gods and finds a place between an old washerwoman and a young boy. They sing the hymn Gentle Mother. Sansa knows across the city on Visenia's Hill, the great sept of Baelor is packed as well. She offers prayers for her brothers and sister, for her bastard brother at the wall, for her parents and friends, and the entire Stark household. She even prays for Tyrion and the Hound, the knight who saved her. But when the Septon begins praying for Joffrey, Sansa leaves disgusted. The castle is empty. She still hears the voices around the city and the noises of battle. Steel on steel, catapults flinging, and men dying are rising to a crescendo. At the drawbridge to Maegor's holdfast, she encounters Lady Tanda Mary and her 2 daughters. Sansa helps ease Lawless's concern a bit and bids her to enter the safety of the castle. Sansa observes that most of the men guarding the nobility assembled are sellswords dressed as knights. She takes her place in the queen's ballroom and notices an eerie presence in the back, Sir Ilyn Payne, who is armed with her father's greatsword, Ice. Cersei enters and Sansa sits beside her. Sansa asks why Sir Ilyn is here, and Cersei points to the doors and says when the axes break through, they'll need Sir Ilyn's skill to protect them. They may even need him to protect them from the sellswords who are guarding them if Lord Stannis wins. Do you know what happens when a city is sacked? The Queen Regent asks. Sansa doesn't. Cersei mocks her for believing all the songs and stories about virtuous knights and honorable wars. Sadly, Sansa knows that Cersei is right. Davos 3. Black Betha is sailing through strong winds and choppy seas as Davos Seaworth captains it through Blackwater Bay. He's proud of his sons serving on other vessels in Stannis' fleet. War horns are blaring commands to the fleet as Sir Imry Florent, brother to Stannis' wife Selyse, captains from Fury, the huge, formidable Baratheon flagship. Davos is in the second line of the massive force, and he watches as the other vessels lower sails and dip oars as they approach the capital. Some ships of the fleet are lagging behind. If he were admiral, Davos would have sent a few swift ships ahead to scout for Lannister traps. Sir Imry rejected that idea. Stannis has 4 times as many ships as, and they had no need for caution. Bad weather had delayed their voyage from Storm's End, and Davos can understand the need for haste. Stannis would have reached the capital days ago, and was likely seething along the riverbanks at their delay. Fishermen had been captured and told them the imp had a boom chain built to close off the mouth of the river. Davos hopes they find the chain raised, as it will force Sir Imry to slow down. Davos wears his old green cloak and boiled leather. The highborn lords are gleaming in their heavy armor. Davos worries about cramming the massive fleet onto the river, where a numerical advantage lessened. He clutches his bag of finger bones and says a silent prayer. Salladhor Saan and his pirate fleet are given the rear guard and ordered to remain anchored in the bay. Too bad, Davos thinks. We could use their maritime expertise in this battle. The horns begin calling men to battle. The drums begin to pound. The men beat their swords against their shields, and archers string their bows. Davos sees the mouth of the river, and no boom chain is present. But the Onion Knight sees something flashing beneath the dark water. However, there is no time to consider why the chain is not raised. The Lannister fleet has been spotted. Scorpions, catapults, and trebuchets begin firing down upon them from the castle walls. Arrows begin flying too, but only a few men and ships are hit by that. Davos sees Stannis' forces along the riverbanks beginning to rafts and cogs to cross the river. Above them, the fiery heart fluttering in the breeze. We should be flying the crowned stag, Davos thinks. The stag was King Robert's, and the city would be happy to see it instead of some stranger's banner. It reminds Davos of the shadow baby that Melisandre wrought. Thankfully, she is not at the battle. The men feared a sorceress would taint Stannis' victory, and so the king sent her back to Dragonstone. The ships begin to land their men. While Davos sees Lannister men waiting for them on river, he hears a great crashing as their fleet begins to engage the enemy vessels and run into each other, clogged and confused. Black Betha rams a Lannister ship, and its men sink down to their watery deaths. Then Davos hears the cry of wildfire as he sees a green spark out of the corner of his eye. Men and ships are on fire. Davos' ship hooks another Lannister vessel, and they easily take the enemy down. Victory is at hand until one of their slower ships, the Swordfish, itself aflame and pointing its huge fish-styled ram, begins barreling toward a ship oozing green blood. No, Davos cries, as a violent swirling explosion of wildfire engulfs their fleet and knocks Davos into the river. Fighting to climb to the water's surface, Davos watches as dead men float beside him. He realizes Sir Imry and his sons are lost. The current was sending him downstream toward the mouth. He hopes he could swim to shore or reach the Lyseni fleet out in the bay. But the chain is raised. The ships are being pushed together, and the wildfire is consuming everything and everyone in sight. Tyrion 13. Tyrion is watching the chaos in Blackwater Bay, the walls of King's Landing. He knows that across the river, Stannis is watching as well. Joffrey is whining that their fleet was destroyed. It was unavoidable, Tyrion declares. The wildfire has destroyed half of Stannis, but not enough for the Lannisters to win. And many ships and men are getting away and landing men below the city walls because the river's current is a tricky thing to control. Tyrion is preparing to send another sortie out to Stannis, and he orders the 3 whores to be positioned to impede their coming. He sends Joffrey off to catapult the antlers into their king. A ram is pounding the King's Gate, and Tyrion and company rush off to defend the area. He orders the men to rush out and destroy the ram and the men wielding it, but the hound refuses, fearful of the fire that is blazing all around them. Tyrion announces he will lead the sortie and shames many of the men into fighting because of his stupid bravery. As he rides out, he dares not look back to see if the men are actually following him. Sansa 6. Sansa is observing the men and women sheltering in the Queen's ballroom. She is listening to the news of the battle being reported to Cersei, who is drunk, but is looking more and more beautiful with each glass, though Sansa notes that Cersei's green eyes are eyes of wildfire. Cersei mocks her guests' cries and fears, noting that she wishes she could face sword and steel like Jaime, who once told her he only feels alive in battle or in bed. Cersei says that she hopes her protection will be seen as brave to the men and women gathered if they win the battle, or allow many to survive. She has to go to the walls and yield to Stannis. However, if Maegor's holdfast is breached before Stannis can enter the city, then everyone should be prepared to be raped, tortured, mutilated, and even murdered. Cersei hopes to use a woman's true weapon to seduce their conquerors, but knows that she'd have better luck seducing Stannis' horse than the one true king himself. She tells Sansa to learn to use her own to control men. Cersei is informed that 2 maidservants and a groom tried to escape by stealing horses. The queen orders their beheading and tells Sansa to learn how to rule by making the people fear you more than your enemies. Sansa thinks that she will make her people love her when she is queen. Cersei laments how she and Jaime were so alike when they were younger that they would dress in each other's clothes and fool everyone around them. But when it came time for Jaime to learn to wield a sword, there was none for Cersei, and her destiny was clear: to be sold off like a horse and to sing and smile and please a man by giving him children. Many guests leave to pray, and a singer serenades the rest with sad songs, as news comes that Stannis' men have landed and are ramming the gates. The women begin to cry, including Sansa. Cersei calls her a traitor, claiming to know that she goes to the Godswood to pray for the fall of House Lannister. The queen tells Sansa that she will need her tears to convince Stannis to spare her, but he won't get the chance because Sir Ilyn is really there to behead them all should Stannis actually win the battle. Cersei tells Sansa to pray again, and this time for a different outcome. Tyrion 14. Tyrion has arrived at the tourney grounds to find Baratheon ships and men landing. They are ramming the King's Gate, but Tyrion, Sir Mandon Moore, Pod, and crew attack them and send them fleeing. Ahead, along the shore, they see more men fighting. They ride off for the Mudgate. The air is filled with screams and fire, war horns and trumpets, swirling wildfire, and crashing boulders. Battle fever takes Tyrion, and time seems to stop, and aches seem to lessen as he cuts his way through scattered bodies and enemy soldiers. Sir Balon Swan, wielding a mace covered in blood and brains, rides up to Tyrion and points to more Baratheon men flooding the shores. Where are they coming from? Tyrion asks. He sees that the galleys are crammed together and have created a bridge from bank to bank, allowing the enemy to cross the river. Those are brave men, Tyrion declares. Let's go kill them. They ride on to meet the oncoming enemy. Their horses jump onto the burning hulks, and Tyrion's steed breaks a leg, forcing the imp to slit the poor beast's throat. Tyrion and the two King's Guard fight their way through the swamp. A rock smashes the deck, and the beams break, and Tyrion slips into the water. He clings to the pieces as the ship begins to float downstream, and out of the corner of his eye he sees battle raging beneath 100 banners on Stannis' side of the river. Who is he fighting? The half-man asks. Sir Mandon Moore yells Tyrion's name and extends his left hand to save Tyrion. Tyrion reels back, sensing a problem, as Sir Mandon's blade in his right hand slashes across the imp's face. Tyrion clings to splintered wood to hold on as water and blood fill his face. The knight points the sword at his throat and prepares to jab it, when Tyrion sees the man lurch, stagger, and collapse into the water with a shout and a splash. Someone kneels over Tyrion. Jaime? He asks, knowing his brother is always there to save him. Be still, my lord, the shadow answers. You're hurt bad. It almost sounded like Pod. Sansa 7. Lancel Lannister is chastising Cersei for calling Joffrey back from a battle, as it caused their men to lose heart and for the battle to be now lost. Also lost are Tyrion and Sir Mandon, Lancel claims. Cersei is incredulous. Fighting on both sides of the river, Osney Kettleblack says. The whole thing is confusing. The city is now in utter chaos. Sansa's prayers have been answered, but she may soon lose her own head, she thinks. Raise the drawbridge and bar the doors, Cersei commands. Lancel pleads with her to reconsider, but she slams her fists into his wound, and the Lannister's cousin screams in pain, nearly fainting. Cersei exits stage right, and the women begin wailing. Sansa stands up to comfort them and orders servants to help Sir Lancel and for Moonboy to entertain them. Sir Dantos approaches and tells her to go back to her chambers and lock the door. Sansa reaches her pitch-black bedroom. As she throws open the drapes, a multitude of collars, green and jade, orange, red and yellow, light the sky, which was filled with a terrible burning smell. A shadow moves behind her and reaches out, grabbing her. It's the Hound, and he's drunk and frightened and covered in blood. He threatens Sansa and tells her of all he's lost on this night. How he will escape, how he can protect her, but first he wants the song that was promised to him. Sing, he says, as he pushes her down on the bed and puts a knife to her throat. I'm not going to sing this.
Oh, I was really hoping to hear it.
Yeah.
You didn't
Gentle
promise.
Mother.
I
didn't promise.
You didn't promise me the song.
Yeah.
And I don't have a knife to your throat, so.
Gentle Mother, she begins to sing, the only song she can remember in this moment of fear and despair. Little bird, the Hound replies as she feels the tears on his face. Sandor rips off the white cloak and tosses it on the floor, his footsteps heavy as he leaves the room. Sansa rises later to find the Hound's cloak on the floor. She wraps herself in it. After a while, she hears bells ringing and the sounds of cheering. Dawn is visible as she watches from the window, and the door opens and Sir Dantos, drunk and exuberant, enters and twirls her around. What is it? Sansa demands. Done, he exclaims. Stannis is defeated. The Lion and the Rose came down upon him together and smashed his host, driving him into the river. Lord Tywin Lannister and Lord Randall Tarley and Lord Mace Tyrell, he dances around the room. Do you know who led the vanguard? He asks. Robb, Sansa thinks, but she knows that's too much to hope for. Lord Renly, Dantos proclaims, in his green armor and antlered helm. Oh, the banners, darling Sansa. Oh, to be a knight. All right, so those are the 6 chapters. 6 long chapters. Actually, they're not too long. I mean, it was.
No, they were pretty short, except for
a couple the Davos one was. Yeah, Davos was pretty long. I think maybe the first Sansa one was pretty long. But there's some great stuff in that. in those chapters that unfortunately weren't adapted into the episode. And obviously, we talked about the budget concerns and everything. But I want to talk about a few of those. First of all, I want to talk about um, two images that we get from those chapters. First is Davos's thought as the ships are coming in the bay, and he sees Stannis's forces on one side below the banner of the fiery heart of the Lord of Light.
Yeah.
And he thinks it should have been the Stag Banner. It should have been his brothers. It should have been King Robert's, because maybe the people would have welcomed that relief, that thought. And I think that's just an interesting thought that, a lot of politics is public relations, is making people remember good times. And Robert wasn't a great king at all, but he presided over a pretty peaceful realm.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder, if Stannis hadn't taken this fiery heart as his banner, would he been more well received? I'm not sure. I mean, that's kind of a,
he might have been a little more well received. I mean, but I don't think it would have changed anything.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other image is Sansa as she's watching Cersei get drunker and drunker, and how she keeps getting Cersei gets more and more beautiful, but her eyes are so green like wildfire, which I think in the show it's that image is not said in the episode, but obviously we know in season 6 Cersei uses wildfire to great effect, to kill her enemies, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then it's definitely something that we think is going to happen in the books. I mean, she's already using wildfire to burn down the old Tower of the Hand at King's Landing, I think in A Feast for Crows.
And Jaime makes that comparison too in the book to her.
Yep. He stands there, right? He stands there watching her, thinking of King Aerys, right? At that
moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he says something about her eyes with that too, about them.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
no, I think you might be right. And they obviously have green eyes. Does Jaime has green eyes, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I think so. They're twins. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. So here's a few of the differences between the show episode and the book chapter. So first of all, the battle is over a period of like 2 or 3 days. So Stannis' army arrives early, taking I guess it's the King's Road, right? The King's Road from Storm's End up to...
Yeah, he rides down, right? He doesn't. Yeah. He's not even on the ships.
He's not on the ships, and he's been camping. He's been camping along the opposite bank of the river. And actually, one of the things that Sansa, when in her first episode, she smells burning. No, it's actually an earlier episode or an earlier chapter. She smells burning, and what it is, it's Tyrion's mountain clans that he sent out to kind of harass Stannis's rear guard and his wagon train. And so Stannis just like burns a bunch of the Kingswood to try and drive them out. But again, the battle's over the period of a couple days, and actually the battle at King's Landing, when the fleet arrives, I think it arrives sometime during the day, and the battle goes through the night.
Yeah.
Basically. And so obviously in the show it's all in one night. Another difference that I think was really interesting is Sansa really gives more insight into what's happening inside the city, inside the castle and the Seps. and talks a lot about religion. You get a really good sense of the religious ceremony that surrounds, people praying and hunkering down for the battle. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, she says something interesting when people are lighting candles to the seven. One of the gods that they aren't really praying to is the stranger. There's a few people praying to the stranger though, and Sansa in that moment thinks, Stannis is the stranger, and he's come to judge us, just like the stranger comes to judge.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
she actually goes over and lights a candle to the stranger, and it's kind of a way, basically she's asking for him not to judge her too harshly, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
The sounds of the battle, we really don't get that when we're inside Maegor's Holdfast, inside the Red Keep. You don't hear anything outside the windows. You don't see the the wildfire through the windows. You don't see that against the night sky from Cersei and Sansa's point of view. And I thought that was, that they're cowering in there like hens, and there's a reason, because they can hear the battle, they can smell the battle, they can see the battle from the windows, and I thought that was something effective in the chapters. You already said this. Stannis is leading the infantry and the cavalry, and Imry Florent is commanding the fleet.
Yes.
Tommen is not in King's Landing. He's been sent to Rosby Castle. It's actually a big point of frustration on Cersei's part, because Tyrion earlier has sent Myrcella to Dorne.
Yeah.
Now he spirited Tommen away to protect him, and of course she thinks that it's a plot by Tyrion to kill her son and everything. And then
Of course.
of course,
Yeah.
we talked about the chain. We don't need to talk about that again. Davos has 4 to 5 sons in the fleet. He either has 4 sons in the fleet, or he has 5 sons in the fleet, and then he has another son who is serving as Stannis's squire, and that, I think that person's Devon. I think that's Devon Seaworth. And
Yeah,
Devon's
I think so.
Devon's the only one that survives the battle. The Lannister fleet is bigger than one ship. I think it says there's like 30 or 40 ships in the books. Maybe not that many, but it's definitely more than 10 or 20. So in the show we get one ship. The Hound doesn't deliver the "fuck the king" speech, and he definitely doesn't deliver it to Joffrey.
I thought he
delivers
did.
He delivers "bugger the king."
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, he says "bugger the king's hand." It's delivered only to Tyrion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I think the show one is much more effective.
Oh yeah.
Joffrey's there just like.
And his face is just so good
yeah.
in the show. He's just like.
Yeah. Let's see. Tyrion is mounted on a horse, so when he rides out, he's on a horse.
Yeah.
That's obviously doesn't happen in the.
I like that he's on foot more. I think.
Yeah.
I just don't think it'd be as aesthetically pleasing. For some reason. It might
I
be,
agree.
but I don't know.
It'd also be hard to, you know, to probably shoot that with him being,
Yeah.
what's the proper term?
Short.
Short. I think a dwarf is okay. I think. Well, technically he is a dwarf. I mean, so we can say that.
Yeah.
Because it's said in the books. So yeah, I think that would be hard to film. And again, especially at night with a horse and all that, that just complicates production. Cersei's ballroom. It's filled. It's not just filled with women. There's old men there, jugglers, singers.
Yeah, what's his name's in there? That guy that's always coughing, Giles.
Oh, Giles Rosby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Cersei's like, I just wish he'd die.
Yeah, he's in
Which is
there.
funny. Like, why is he there if, or is it Giles Merriweather?
Is he married with her?
I'm not sure. We're gonna need to look that up. Um, yeah, one of them. I mean, there's definitely someone in there that just keeps coughing. Um,
Yeah.
it's really annoying, Cersei. Uh, well, what doesn't annoy Cersei?
Yeah. I'm looking it up. Yeah, Giles Rosby.
Okay, so why is he there when Tommen is at his castle? Like you'd think. Of
Yeah,
course, that's probably a diversion. Well, Lord Rosby is in King's Landing. Why would Tommen
yeah,
be at Rosby? Maybe that's the reason.
that that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah. Um, we talked about this earlier as well. Don't need to highlight it again, but the Bridge of Ships. Um, Sansa watching the wildfire from her window. Um, Dantos delivers the news of Stannis has lost to Sansa. That doesn't really happen in the episode. Like just the next episode is when Sansa finds out she's already at court. And then finally, and I think this is something that's kind of lost, is Renly's armor.
Oh
In
yeah,
the
yeah.
Loras is in it, which is fine. That's not the issue. But it's from Tyrion's perspective, and you kind of look at it like I remember watching it. I'm like, why do they keep showing this close up of this guy in this armor? Obviously, when I started to read the books and went back and watched the show again, obviously I got, okay, well, this is Stannis seeing Renly in his armor.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I don't think it comes across like it does in the books, obviously, because they get to talk about, one, Melisandre's vision was that Stannis would lose to Renly beneath the walls of King's Landing. And so that's why Stannis, one of the reasons they assassinate Renly, because he thinks
Her
he'll
misread
lose.
visions.
And so, right. So she's not wrong.
Yeah.
She just, it's Garland Tyrell that's in that armor in the books. But you get this sense of some of the Stormlords when they see that armor, they're switching sides and all this stuff, and it just comes across better in the books than it does in the show, because in the show you really don't like. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
Loras Tyrell, you don't really get the Renly's armor isn't really a thing.
Now,
Is what I'm trying to say.
is it ever explained a little more about like what was all going on in Stannis's camp? Like, is there any more like imagery or anything?
I don't know. You mean like,
Because it just sounds so cool. Like, because everyone's
yeah,
what like they notice fighting on the
you cut out
other.
there.
Oh, I was saying it just sounds so cool the way like everyone's like Tyrion like looks over and he sees fighting on the other side of the river, and
Yeah.
everyone's just wondering what's going on. Like I don't know, just be kind of cool to get Stannis's thoughts about it or something, like what
Yeah, because
how it went down.
yeah, there's that image that's, I think Dantos first says it, and then maybe in A Storm of Swords they talk more about it, or maybe it's the next Sansa chapter when the Lannisters are in the throne room and handing out the accolades. But um, the Lannisters and the Tyrells rush him from the rear and basically push him and all his men into the river. Now
Mm.
Stannis may have already been in the river getting ready to cross across the bridge, but basically they're like fighting for their lives, like neck deep in water. And then that's either when they board some cogs and some rafts, or the Lyseni, Salladhor Saan's fleet gets the signal to move in
Mm.
and get them away. So yeah, I would love to see that. I mean, that would be awesome to see, just this cavalry pushing these men into the river and these ships coming in to save them.
Yeah.
That would be something awesome to see. So, any thoughts? Any thoughts from you about the episode? I mean, we've talked a lot about this. I've got a couple questions, but
Hmm.
I mean, that's Blackwater, and it's a really good episode. It's a great set of chapters in the books. It's a pivotal moment. It's one of those things that comes
Yeah.
out of nowhere.
I
You
just. Go ahead and
okay?
finish
Nope,
what.
I was done. I was done.
Oh, okay. No, I like what's it? What's his name? Sir Mandon Moore.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That guy's a badass, man. Like, but then he just, it's so unexpected. Like he's like with Tyrion the whole time, like right by his side, fighting through everything Tyrion uh, does, and I think Tyrion says like he's carrying the the king's banner, and he drops it like right at the last minute to spear someone. Like, I don't know, like he just seems like a complete badass, and then Pod pushes him off the thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you said, one, he saves Tyrion at least once or twice in the battle.
Yeah,
Or maybe that's in the show. But anyways, and then he's got these badass moves. He's just cutting people left and right, and then all of a sudden I guess it's just the fact that there's this little kid there, and he's not going to worry about some little squire, and then
yeah,
Pod Pod just kills him. I liked it in the show. I mean, it's not really described other than him like freezing and then lurching to the side and falling.
yeah.
But you get that shaft, that spear coming through the face.
And Pod breaks it off too.
Yeah,
In the
breaks it
show,
off.
he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but yeah.
'Cause
No, I just thought it was it was cool, and obviously that's probably Littlefinger's doing again because of the.
yeah, that's one of the questions I had. Who put the hit on Tyrion?
I think it's obviously Littlefinger because Tyrion promises to what he says, he doesn't know it's him, but he says it to Littlefinger, and he wasn't really. Littlefinger, I guess, gets worried in that at that moment when he says, doesn't he promise him that he would bring him John Aaron's killer or something like that earlier
Uh,
on in the book,
Yeah,
and that's probably the reason. And he
yeah.
did, yeah, he wasn't really threatening Littlefinger though.
Right.
He was just bringing it up, and I think Littlefinger took it as I'm on to you.
Yeah, yeah. Someone recently I was listening to was talking about how Littlefinger did see Tyrion as a threat, a real threat where Ned Stark would have been a threat, but Ned Stark, he always got it wrong.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
he looked the wrong direction. Tyrion you know, was kind of looking the right direction. He didn't get to the he didn't he didn't get to the final stage of the information, but he was on the right path.
yeah, yep. Because
Okay, so yeah, actually, I didn't. It's not that I didn't have an idea. I couldn't like for some reason I was thinking was it Joffrey who did it or was it Cersei who did it, but I couldn't remember um, who put the hit on Tyrion.
yeah, I think it was probably Littlefinger.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Um, if Melisandre had been with Stannis, would he have won?
I don't think so because you get the POV from her later, and that and was it Dance with Dragons, I think, or is it
Uh huh.
Feast?
Yeah,
Okay.
Dance with Dragons. Yeah.
And you find out she's got power, but she's not really all knowing like she plays herself off to be. So I would say no, because she still got that vision wrong. I mean, yeah. But then again, she does do some cool shit when they're attacking the wildlings, like with Varamir Sixskins and
Yeah, and that that brings up a good point. Like, is that power, which is really cool, her
is it Varamir Sixskins?
Yeah, it is.
I almost said Varamir Foreskins, but
oh shit. He's probably, well, I mean, think of all the animals he's been in. He's had a lot of foreskins in his life. Yeah, so he is. I think he's in Orell's eagle, because I think Orell is dead by then, maybe, and
yeah, because I think he's in it. Because
yeah, he's in the eagle. He's watching. And he's the one saying, "Hey, there are men in armor on horses, headed this way," and Mance is saying to John, like, who are these people? And John, of course, has no idea. But yeah, she like sets him on fire. She sets the eagle on fire, which obviously hurts Faramir. Now, is that because she's at the wall, where we find out that her powers are stronger at the wall? Or is that something that she could have done at King's Landing? Like you said, she has the ability to have. I'll say it like this. This might not be what I'm trying to say. But she has the ability to have convenience of fact, convenience of truth. So basically, Stannis, you sent me away from the Battle of Blackwater. Had I been there, you would have won. Which obviously affects Stannis later on. It's why when Davos returns, he's in that great funk, because he sent Melisandre away. He lost. She's telling him he lost, and Davos comes back into the equation saying, "Yeah, no wait, she was the reason you lost. All this shit that you did up until then is the reason we lost that battle." Obviously, a lot of other things too, but it's I don't know. I tend to think she would have been able to do something. I don't know what. I mean, she's already. It's already to the point where she's not going to make another shadow baby with him, because she's saying his powers are depleted after the second one that killed Courtney Penrose. So I don't know what else she could have done. So again, did the wall give her that? Did the wall give her that ability to kill the eagle, or was that something she could do at any moment? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to say I tend to think I don't think she could have done.
Yeah.
She would. I don't think she would have changed the tide of battle. But she may have done some of that stuff, like some of that cool stuff though. But yeah, I feel like no, I don't think it would have changed the outcome in the end.
Yeah, yeah, and it would be interesting too, like where she would have been in the cavalry with Stannis. She wouldn't have been on the ships, but we find out a little later on in the days with Hagen.
Oh, I just had I had a crazy thought. What if Stannis did stick her on the like the ship with Davos? Like, could she have used the wildfire? Like, could she have somehow controlled it or done
oh wow
something with that? I don't know. I don't know exactly what her powers are. So,
excuse me.
I know she probably wouldn't have burned. She if she is she could be immune to fire. I mean I don't know, but
right.
No,
that's sorry. That's something interesting. I haven't thought about that. And I was going to say more from the standpoint of, but I think what you just said is really interesting. Like, would she be able to control the wildfire?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of supernatural in a way. I mean, it's really George writes it in like it's the supernatural force that's just out of control, and yeah, you can make it and you can wield it, you can throw it and use it, but once it's out, it's out. It kind of has its own force, and so that would be interesting. Is that something that she can control?
Yeah.
Additionally, Davos has uh, these really serious hesitations about the plan that Sir Imry um, has crafted. Like, send scout ships ahead, send don't cram all the fleet in, like land the fleet at other places. If for some reason Davos and Melisandre had been together, would she have sided with him and said, we need to listen to this guy? So I think that's interesting. It's just one of those things you'll never know, and it's fun to speculate about, but it could go any which way. And it's hard to say she would change the course of the battle when she's been so wrong on so many things throughout the course of the books.
Well, and maybe George didn't want to explore her powers yet at that point, and he was like, let's just leave her off screen for now.
Yep.
Yep. And then explore those.
Well, and I think that sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, like, yeah, he.
Well, I think he wanted Stannis to lose this battle.
Well, yeah.
For a number of reasons, but I think it's whether he had it in mind when he created Stannis that Stannis was going to go north and do all of that, or it just kind of developed that way. Which, then kind of brings up the question, okay, if George purposely left her, then if she had been there, would she have been able to affect it? But like to your point, it's kind of narrative convenience from his standpoint of just saying, I don't want her to be here because I don't want people to then say, characters in universe and readers to say, well, why did she do anything? Because that probably would have been proof positive to Stannis. Well, hell, she can't do anything. Like, if she can't affect the course of this battle while it's happening,
yeah,
what's her purpose?
Yeah. So, and it could be that, or I mean, it could be so many different things.
Right.
Too, because he may have not had her super fleshed out yet, and
right.
like how powerful he wanted her to be.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Well, I think two more things, and then I don't have anything else.
I got one thing, but I'll let you.
Okay. Littlefinger. So we can thank Littlefinger, as always, for going to, where does he go? He goes to Bitter Bridge, I think, and with he's there first with Renly's there, like encamped and holding a tournament because Renly's Renly, and but he he orchestrates the Tyrell support by floating the idea of Marjorie marrying Joffrey, and obviously from I think it's from Bitterbridge they go to Highgarden, and that's where they negotiate with Olenna Tyrell and others, and that's where he begins to lay that groundwork against Joffrey. Begins to have the whispers of the servants that Joffrey's a monster and terrible. So, but again, the Tyrells show up right in the nick of time to defeat Stannis. So we can thank Littlefinger for that, and then we can also thank Edmure Tully for not listening to Rob's orders. I mean, there's not a day goes by that I don't see some debate over that topic. Well, Edmure was the liege lord. He had the responsibility to go out and protect his people. And like, well, no, he should have listened to King Rob and stayed where he was, and that would have kept Tywin in the west.
And wasn't that didn't didn't Beefish make a defense against it may have not been him. It might have been, I don't know. There's a history. I think it's a history of Westeros episode where they actually talk about it, and they actually give a defense for one of the guests. I'll have to look it up, but um,
A defense for Edmure.
yeah,
Edmure
yeah,
Tully.
yeah. And
Yeah.
they were they were just kind of saying like there's no way he would have even known like uh
Right.
but yeah, so
Oh, that's right. He says that. He said no one told him.
yeah, he didn't know. He
I mean, Rob tells him to stay in River Run,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right? And then he goes out, but had he have known that, oh, I want to keep them here, so you're going to have to just stay in the castle to keep them in the west.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So yeah, I could see the defense and arguments of either side.
right. Right.
Did you have anything else?
Nope.
Okay, well,
That's
okay.
all I have.
I'll do one more. We'll talk about this real quick, and then we can do our closing, I guess.
Okay.
So in the book you have, and I thought actually let me start back here. So I had this thought actually just a few minutes ago. So there's no chain in the show, but in the books, Tyrion, to win this battle, he's kind of he he lets his sister use the wild, come up with the wildfire idea, and he lets her run with it, and then he kind of puts that into action. He's the one who builds the chain, and then he's appeasing Joffrey with the antler men,
Right.
and he's just kind of using them, he kind of uses their tendencies and then puts it into his plan to defeat Stannis. And then Tywin swoops in at the end of the day, and cleans it up. But I just thought it was interesting that's how it worked out. There's teamwork there in a way.
Yeah. Unintentional.
Yeah,
teamwork,
yeah.
But
But Tyrion kind of used it.
right. Tyrion knows how to play them.
But then I think Tywin was playing off of them,
Yep.
and
Yep.
because he knows how they work. So
Right. Right. I mean, it's the reason he sends Tyrion there to begin with. Like,
yeah,
so I can't send Jaime. Jaime's captured, and he probably knows that. He probably also knows that Jaime's just not to Cersei, and
is this what?
uh, Tywin probably knows that Jaime won't stand up to Cersei either.
Oh yeah,
So Jaime's not an effective counter to Cersei. Tyrion is. Tyrion's smart, and I think it's also it shows that Tywin knows that Tyrion's a lot like him. He's
Yeah.
smart. He knows how to use people. He knows how to manipulate people. He knows how to get action from people. And to your point that okay, let let Cersei play with the wildfire. That will help us. That will be effective. Keep Joffrey occupied over here. That will keep him out there and seen by the men. All that.
Well, and he's shooting traitors off of
He's shooting traitors off, right? Exactly.
So
And then the chain is the real effective weapon. That's what really stops the ability of Stannis's. I mean, his men still get across, but if they hadn't had the chain and the wildfire combined, they would have. Because it even says in the chapters that wildfire's hitting ships, but it's not hitting all of them.
yeah,
And one might crash, and the rest of them get around it. They would have been able to protect Stannis and his men as they cross the river. So, it probably, without that chain, it probably wasn't going to have a big effect.
Yeah.
And even with the chain, Tyrion says at one point, "This battle's,
this
I'm going to have to go.
Wait,
The battle's lost."
Oh, okay.
Even with the chain and and throwing the traitors out of the city, Tyrion laments that this battle's lost. And I'm going to have to go out there and try to just win it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think I think I'm out of things to talk about. Well, I mean, there's always stuff to talk about, but
there's always stuff to talk about. But I think we've talked about a lot. I mean, this has been a pretty engrossing discussion. It's again, it's a great episode with and great chapters with a lot of implications for the future. I think this is one of those, we didn't really talk too much about what the fan reaction to this episode was. I never took. Now you had a good point early in this podcast talking about that this really kind of solidified your love for the show.
Yes.
And there's probably a lot of people, but this necessarily isn't one of those Jon Snow's dead. Robb Stark's murdered at the wedding. The Viper's head is crushed in. I mean, Ned Stark gets his head cut off. Like, I never saw any kind of reactions to this episode. This would, in my opinion, this would probably the twist at the end of this episode would never make a top 10 most shocking moments in Game of Thrones.
No, I think the way it ended was kind of it's just one of those things. You're happy for some characters. You feel really terribly for others. Like, I didn't really feel terrible for Stannis at the time because I was a show watcher, so they hadn't really explored his character yet in the show.
Right.
But you feel bad for Davos because you think he's dead, and then of course Sansa, and then Tyrion lives, so that's fine, but now Tywin's back, so it's kind of, it is it's a bittersweet ending, but in a different way. Yeah,
I was hoping you were going to say that, because the reverse would be true. I mean, if Stannis had won, it would be a bittersweet ending as well, because probably Tyrion's going to die. Varys might die. These people that we like might die. So yeah, it's again back to our earlier point. This of all the episodes of all the episodes that have had this high of stakes for both sides, this is really the one that you're legitimately like, I don't know who I want to win.
Yeah.
And whoever wins, there are serious ramifications for the rest of the characters as well. So yeah, I think that this plot in both the books and the show is really effective, because it's really to the core of what Game of Thrones, that it's about the politics and it's about the characters, and it's about one small change can have major effects, and this episode, these chapters just do it very well.
Yep. Is Edmure?
Yeah, is he gonna be back in season 8? Like, he should really be back in season 8, right?
I don't know.
Well, first of all, Ghost needs to be back.
Yeah, he wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ! I will loan Hannah my border collie. I'll spray her white. Just get the damn dog back. The wolf back. This is ridiculous.
You
can't afford a fucking
that's
Wolf.
that's because they jumped like all the top five actors to, from what was I mean it was like a few 100,000 an episode to 1.1 or 1.2 million an episode. You
Yeah,
couldn't have
yeah,
maybe not
yeah.
did the
If I was like,
400% raise. You know?
right, right, I'd say we're gonna give you this, but we're gonna take like 0.2% from each of you, and we're gonna have that damn back. And you're just gonna have to live with it because the fans are like, where's
Yeah,
Ghost?
yeah. I mean,
I mean, there were people like
that was a
Kid,
big raise. It was a big
Kid,
raise.
yeah. Oh, it's huge, right? Uh, there are people, there are people taking like Kit Harington, Rose Leslie wedding pictures and inserting Ghost, saying, "Why was he not invited?"
Oh,
I mean, you know it's bad when people.
yeah, yeah.
Like I saw
Oh.
someone just like tweeting like, "Where the hell was this? Is ridiculous."
Oh,
Oh
God.
my.
All right.
All right. Well, it's been a great discussion.
And maybe our next episode, whichever one we release, we, uh, after this one, we'll figure that one out as it goes. Maybe we can get a guest on and we can talk a little bit briefly about what they first thought about uh, the Battle of the Blackwater,
Yeah. So
and we'll
in
follow it
our
up with that.
yeah, actually, let's clarify something. In our previous episode, our first episode, which we want to thank you all for listening, and if you're new to the podcast, please go back and listen to that episode, and know that we've got some really good things we think planned for this podcast. But we talk about in that first episode that we're going to talk about the Mountain Viper next, and that was our plan. We had recorded we recorded a couple times on that. One a test run and another one recently, and we just had some technical issues. That's something that we hope to cover in the near future. Maybe with a guest, maybe like this, just us talking about it. So if you're listening to that first episode and you're like, hey, I thought I was going to hear Mountain and the Viper. Well, we apologize. So you get Blackwater. It's better.
It's an elaborate trick.
It's a yes.
It is better than this episode is better because we got to hear you, Travis, talk a lot, and it is always good when you talk a lot.
It's well, all right. I'll take that as a
It's
compliment,
yeah. It's
okay. I just have a lot to say about this episode, and I told you when I wanted to cover it, I was like, I'm gonna have a lot to say about this episode.
oh, I mean that's totally fine.
So, all right. Well, why don't you take us out, Brett? Since I have been talking a lot.
Okay, and also another clarification. We said the last episode's going to be up on um, Podbean, and unfortunately, we didn't know that costs money, so we're gonna wait on that one. But you can find us on SoundCloud, and you can find us on YouTube. That's where we'll be uploading for now. You can also find us on Twitter at Planetos Podcast, and you can also email us at planetospodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to like us on Facebook. You just search up Planetos Podcast, and we should be the first link that pops up on there. I've been one of your hosts, Brett, and you can find me and my personal Twitter at HomelyPillow.
And I've been your other host, Travis. You can find me on Twitter at Sir_Travis.
And our intro song was Jungo's Ballad, and that was written by Dylan Revihs and myself. And the outro song, I guess it's gonna be Smack again, right? Or should we go with a different
The
one?
outro.
Yeah.
No, let's stay with what you always dance with the partner that brings you to the dance.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean,
I didn't say that exactly right, but you get the gist.
well, I mean, like, should we choose a different song by them?
Nah, with that.
Okay, well then, the outro song is by a good friend of mine and his band, Bleach Garden, and the song is called Smack. So check it out.